Um, yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for, on behalf of the Native Women's Society, I want to thank you all for our invitation to present testimony on these important Senate bills. First, I want to say that each bill is of extreme importance to the everyday safety of Native women and the ability of our Indian tribes to protect Native women. These bills remove certain barriers and they increase the ability of Indian tribes to respond to these crimes and provide new options for federal law enforcement agencies to respond to violence against Native women. Given the time restrictions, I'm going to limit my oral comments to just certain key provisions. I do want to begin saying that the crisis we face in the levels of violence committed against Native women is well documented. I believe one of the senators has already talked about the National Institute of Justice published that report in 2016, and it highlighted that more than 4 in 5 Native women have been victims of violence. I think that percentage was 84.3, and that is going to happen in their lifetime. The violence committed against these women included sexual and physical violence, stalking, and psychological abuse. And I've provided many of those statistics in my written testimony. And going on to talk about the Survive Bill, for over 10 years now, the National Congress of American Indians Task Force advocates and tribal leaders have requested the creation of a permanent, dedicated funding stream under the Victims of Crime Act. The concerns of the NCAI Task Force are based on the following information from the United States Justice. When we look at the years between 2011 and 2014, programs that served American Indians and Alaska Native survivors of violent crimes received less than 0.5 of the Crime Victim Fund annually. In 2013, more than 60% of the states with Indian tribes did not make a single subgrant. As a result, Native communities and survivors of violent crimes received little assistance. With the high rates of violence against Native women, Indian tribes and tribal programs need the necessary resources to provide basic services such as safe shelter, rape crisis services, and advocacy for Native women who on many tribal reservations have no services. In addition, Native women need immediate and long-term counseling and medical services due to multiple victimizations committed against them by a single or multiple abusers. And sadly, for those families traumatized by having a missing or murdered relative, they often need assistance with transporting their loved one home and with burial. And it is a travesty of justice that Indian tribes with the highest rates of victimization do not have direct access, a dedicated tribal funding stream under VOCA. Senate Bill 1870 will address this longstanding injustice by directing that 5% of the total annual outlays from the Crime Victims Fund be provided to Indian tribes. And what I wanted to talk about with the Senate Bill 1942 is that to organize and respond to an injustice, it must first be acknowledged and understood. The Native Women's Society of the Great Plains has worked for the last 5 years to increase awareness of this issue. We have supported community justice walks, we have a Facebook page, we've dedicated to missing and murdered Native women, and we honor Native women who've been murdered by a creation of a miniature traditional dresses. There are so many women who have gone missing or who have been murdered. It is truly a crisis facing Indian tribes. In October of 2016, the National Congress of American Indians passed a resolution to address the crisis of missing and murdered Native women and girls by the federal government with agencies included but not limited to the Department of Justice, Interior, Health, and Human Services. And they included to review, revise, and create law enforcement and justice protocols appropriate to the disappearance of Native women and girls, including interjurisdictional issues, to provide victim services to the families and community members of the disappeared and murdered women, such as counseling for their children, burial assistance, community walks, healing ceremonies. Also, the coordination of efforts across federal departments to increase the response to the disappearance or murder of Native women and girls, and coordinating efforts in consultation with Indian tribes to increase the response of state governments where appropriate to cases of disappearance or murder of Native girls and women. These were fundamental steps towards responding to the crisis we face on a daily basis in lost lives. So Senate Bill 1942 addresses necessary steps in responding to the crisis we face as Native women who continue to go missing and are murdered. And this year, the Senate passed a resolution declaring May 5th as National Day of Awareness for the Missing and Murdered Native Women. And I thank you for your support for the National Day of Awareness, and can say that the first National Day of Awareness reached millions of people across the United States and the world through social media platforms. The public call for an increased awareness is indicative of the extent of the reality that Native women go missing on a daily basis, often without any response by law enforcement. I support the changes in the Senate Bill 1942 will make, and also would like to suggest the inclusion of a field hearing on missing and murdered Native women to allow tribal communities the opportunity to share their losses and recommendations of how to improve the justice responses to cases of missing and murdered Native women. And the Tribal Law and Order Act is a historic bill. We as advocates celebrated that because we recognize the need to create that reform in American Indian tribes. And the most significant change being restoring the authority of Indian tribes to sentence offenders for more than a maximum of 1 year per crime. TILOA has many other important provisions, and I would like to address several, and I know I'm out of time. And I have put that in my written testimony. So again, thank you.